We only have a few verses to do so. We'll be out of here. Don't worry. Amen. Amen. But again, we're starting on chapter 3, verse 11. But I think I'm gonna dip back into 10 just a little bit, okay? All right. Just to help us out with 11. Everybody has it? Again, we're gonna catch verse 10 and go to 11, okay? We're gonna do 10 and 11 together. Amen. So to bring us up a little bit, up to date a little bit. So James said in verse 10, out of the same mouth proceeded blessings and cursings. And then he said, my brethren, these things ought not to be. And then it goes on in verse 11, it says, do a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Okay? Everybody got that? So James is, in verse 11, James asks two rhetorical questions to reveal a hidden source of why blessing and cursing are coming out the same mouth. What James is basically saying is conduct reveals character. You ain't gonna get past that. Conduct reveals character. It's not, the mouth can say anything. But your action reveals your character. How you choose to treat people. How you treat, and your mouth becomes part of that. What you say to people. And when you don't have to say it. When you treat people bad and you don't have to treat them bad. All that's part of that. All that's conduct. Yes. All that's conduct. And James is saying the reason that some people's mouths are out of control is because of where it's coming from. It's coming from a bad place. Okay? And then that's when he started talking about, in verse 11, that's when he started asking the question, do a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter water? What James is saying, either the fountain is going to be good or it's going to be bad. The same fountain is not going to give you two different kinds of water. A well is the same way. When you drop that bucket, it's either going to be good water that you pull up, or it's going to be bad water. And they're going to be both of them. So James is basically saying the well is what it is. What you pull up is what it is. Okay? And it all boils down to the source that's feeding the well. Okay? And in some of our Bibles, depending on what, like we read not the King James, but in other Bibles it has brackish water, which is mild, salty water that is found in a freshwater environment, such as a well. See, some people would dig in wells beside the ocean. And what happened, they hit a salt water vein, and the well wasn't no good. They just had to cover it back up because they couldn't drink it. And then they go inland a little further and dig another well. But because you had fresh water going into salt water, they thought that they could just dig a well right in there and get fresh water. But they had to go in deeper. Yeah, they had to go in deeper to get fresh water, okay? So verse 12, James said, he gives another example. He said, can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine fig? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh water. So this is still part of 12, where he's asking that rhetorical question about those two examples. James is saying by nature, a tree is a tree. By nature, a tree is a tree. Whether it's a fruit tree or an oak tree, it's still a tree. It's the seed that determines what the tree produces and reproduces. Okay? Just like the well, it produces water, but it depends on the source that feeds the well if the water is good, is going to be salty, or if it's going to be fresh. And it's the same way with your tongue. It depends on what's feeding. Go ahead.
I guess that's the same as mixing. If you have salt water, and if you mix it with some good water, the good water will be salty.
That's right.
And fruit, if you mix something bad with something good, it's going to eventually be bad, right?
That's right.
Basically, that's what.
That's right. That's right. And that's what James was saying. James was saying, blessings and cursing come out the same mouth. How can you curse what God made and then bless God? That's what James is saying. It don't work like that. And what was happening in those days, they had people that were coming in. And because you didn't look godly, they were cursing you. And treat you real, treat you good. And James said, we can't do that. We all got to be treated. We got to treat everybody the same. How can you curse what God, the image of God, which is man or woman, you cursing the image of God, but then you turn around and bless God? James said we can't do that. That don't work. And what James is saying, it reveals something in your character. It reveals something in your character, how you, the partiality, how you treat one person good and then turn around and treat another person bad. Person said two people right beside each other. You treat this one good and treat that one bad. James said something wrong with that. And it ain't different. It's something on the inside. James said it's something on the inside. We look outward for something to be wrong, but James said, no, this is something on the inside that causes you to look at two people standing beside each other and treat the one on the left good and the one on the right bad. That's something on the inside. Okay? The tongue function on the same principle as what we just talked about. The tongue is the front of what's really something is really going on the inside. It's just the front. It's the one that making all the noise, but it's something else going on the inside. Okay? Anybody got any more questions about verse 12? But we see that all the time. We see that all the time. The two natures and the tongue speaking from one of them. Okay? Verse 13. And then in verse 13, James starts switching the conversation. Because right now, James is talking about the front. It can't be that way for you to claim one thing and do another thing. It can't be that way. Right now, James is talking about how the tongue is speaking, and we're looking at him saying, man, they got a bad mouth. But it's deeper than that. James is saying it's deeper than that. That's his focus right now. He's saying the tongue, yes, they are speaking some bad things, but it's deeper than that. And now James is saying, okay, let's go. In verse 13, he's saying, let's go to the next level and find out why the tongue does what it does. Okay? So in verse 13, he says, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. Okay? So James shifts his focus to two different kinds of wisdom. Spiritually and earthly. Now James is saying the tongue speaking, but it's speaking from one of these two places. Whatever the tongue speaking from one of these two places. Wise and understanding people's lives reflect works done through Christ and the fruit of the Spirit. This wisdom is from above. Okay? And when you exercise this kind of wisdom, because this wisdom right here comes from applying. This is the wisdom that James was talking about, comes from applying. It comes from your lifestyle. It comes from doing. Not just hearing the word, but you become a doer of the word. This becomes your lifestyle. And as a Christian, when you say you're a Christian, you're not just Christian in word. You don't just proclaim you're a Christian. Your lifestyle is Christianity. You live in the life of a Christian. Yes. And James is saying the way that you know is not that what they say is lining up with what they do. Okay? And that you can get that from Galatians 22 and 5, 22 and 23. Love, you'll see some love, you'll see some joy, you'll see some peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that at the end, that self-control is real important because you can hold your tongue. Just because I want to say it don't mean I say it. Okay? That's what James was talking about. Go ahead. You got it?
I was going to ask you, so in spiritually, you're not really allowed to step up. If you good, nice for everybody else, and you got somebody that just you have a hard time with, you just can't, I had a situation like that before I left Millersville, and I just could find nothing good to say to this guy, so I tried to avoid him, but I couldn't because he principal of school. And I ended up leaving.
Yes.
That's how we put it. If I stayed there, it was going to be,
Right.
all my Christianity was going to be gone, but I just could not.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to figure, so that means that my heart's not quite what it needs to be if I can't.
No, what it means is because we all go through this. Remember that now, we all go through this. What it means is that through life it has revealed areas that I need to grow in. And we all go through that. And that's part of sanctification. That's part of the sanctification process that God reveals to you that you're not there yet. Don't get big headed thinking that you're there. And then the devil sends along somebody that pushes your button to reveal to you that, whoo, man, this person right here, boy. I mean, I'm on the verge. Everything that I thought I was, this person brings me into another place. And what God does is, through that person, He builds your tolerance. He builds your self-control. And sometimes we do. We have to take ourselves out of that environment because it's too much for us to bear at that time. And that's when you start hearing the language like, I ain't there yet. I can't do that. So we have to remove ourselves until we get the temperament that we can, okay, regardless. I can sit in this atmosphere without allowing it to get in me. Because some people, even though you don't like what they're saying and what they're doing, you can tolerate it. God gives you the grace to tolerate that, until it's over and done, and then you go your way, they go your way. You go your way, they go their way. But there are some people that you can't even tolerate. And there'll be a time frame on it. They'll tell you at the beginning of class that we're only going to be in 30 minutes, and you can't stay in that 30 minutes. You get up in the middle of the class, I can't do it. Ain't no way I can stay in 30 minutes and listen to that. Don't be around that. And God has to give us the grace and the understanding and the knowledge to pull ourselves out of it. And at the same time, because James was talking about the tongue, God gives you the grace to hold yourself and not say what's on your mind and not say what your flesh wants you to say. Okay? It's all in temperament. It's all in temperament. And that's what James was saying. If you read, when we look at verse 13 again, he said, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? It said, let him show out of a good conversation interpreted as conduct. Let him show out of good conduct, okay, his works with meekness of wisdom. See, you see what James was saying? He was saying, if you wise, wisdom comes from the application. We talked about that. Now, wisdom comes from the application. You don't get wise until you apply it. Because you can have knowledge and understanding, but if you never apply it, then where's wisdom? And we see people and we look at him and say, man, that joker know better. I know he know better. Why would he do that? He never applied the wisdom that he had. And we see people in my situation, I've done things that I know I should have done. You know, like I was going to get a different result. You know what I mean? And in that you say, golly, I knew better. After it's all said and done, you say, man, I knew better. You know, you might have trusted somebody that God had told you, they ain't ready for that. They ain't ready for you to open your heart like that to them. Give them a minute. But you went on and did it anyway. And they got a little hurt from it. And God said, I told you so. But I didn't get wisdom out of it. And we see people like that, and we have been through things like that. Okay? So James is saying out of their conversation and out of their conduct, they're going to show good works. They're going to show good works. Okay? Anybody got anything else on verse 13? We're good? So verse 14. He said, but if you have bitter envying and strife in your heart, glory not and lie not against the truth. Bitter envy, desire to have a quality, possession, or other desirable attributes belonging to someone else. You know what envy? That's what envy means. But when you put bitter with it, it means that they are angry and hateful. I'm angry and hateful because he got something that I don't have. I want what he got, and I'm mad that he got it, and I don't have it. So I got a whole nother thing going on. Instead of being mad and angry with myself because I don't do better, to earn what he got, I'm just mad because he got what he got. Isn't that something? You ever met somebody that's mad at you for no reason? Just mad at you for no reason at all. And it shows in the church. It shows in, you know how it shows in the church. Because when we get blessed, we won't show people that we're blessed. Because we're scared of, we don't want to get into this. I don't know nobody mad at me just because God blessed me. You know what I mean? So instead of driving my new truck, I drive my plug. At least I can come into the sanctuary and worship all right. And I won't have to be persecuted for a blessing. That's how I think. Because that's what happens sometimes. That's what happens sometimes.
You know, I think a lot of times too, if you're in a dark place,
Yeah.
and you come out of it, people want to see you stay in that dark place. They don't want to see you. Now, how do they know that dark place?
Yeah.
You should still be, I like the way you down there. Now, and you come out of it, they look at it as arrogant, but you looking at our place. I'm glad God got me out of the dark place. But
Right.
some people look at it, there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, you should have stayed in that dark place.
Yep. And let me ask that.
Yeah,
Sometimes you got friends who don't want to come out.
exactly.
And because you came out, that means they can come out. So every time they see you, they see you holding yourself back. If he did it, you can do it. Every time you remind them of that, every time they see you. And because you remind them of that, guess what? You get that envy and strife. Because you remind them. They don't have to be where they are. They can come up. Y'all grew up in the same neighborhood. Y'all went to the same school. Y'all did some of the same thing. No different. God is no respecter of person. If he brought one up, he'll bring the other up. And you're a constant reminder of it. Yep. So you're gonna get envy and strife. Don't get that. And it has nothing to do with God blessing you, but everything to do with them not wanting to come out of this situation. But you get the other side of it. Selfish ambition. A desire to do or achieve something that's ambition. Nothing wrong with having ambition. Okay? Typically requiring hard work. When you put selfish with it, means that it's all about you. People will step on you to get what they want. People will pull you into unhealthy relationships to get what they want. People will give you bad information, miscommunication. They'll do all that, misguide you, mislead you. When it comes to selfish ambition, if they see you as a means to get what they want, you get all that selfish ambition thrown in there. So we have to be careful. That's when you definitely have to try the Spirit by the Spirit. And that's when you definitely have to go back to verse 13, where James said, check your conduct out now. The language and the conduct need to line up before you start giving your precious, the most precious thing in you is your heart. Before you give that thing away, make sure something lining up. The language and the conduct line up. Okay? Because if not, then what they're speaking is coming from a place. It's coming from a bad place. Okay? Both of the above qualities cause you to use your tongue in such a way that you become loud and wrong. Selfish ambition, bitter envy, both of them. Just loud and wrong. Loud and wrong. Okay? Y'all ever seen somebody like that?
Yes.
Think the louder they talk, the more right they are? Just because you talk loud, that's right. We have to explain that to some people. Okay? Verse 15. Anybody got any questions on 14? We good? Verse 15. This wisdom descended not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. And we talk about that envy part and that ambition. Okay? James said it's not the spiritual, it's not from above. The second wisdom James is referring to is not from above, but it's earthly, unspiritual, and devilish. It's got a whole nother agenda behind it. This is not that Galatians 5. This has a whole nother agenda behind it. Through the first wisdom, life and blessings are spoken, but through the second wisdom, death and curses are spoken. Both two different wisdoms. Why do we call the second one wisdom? It's because they have become crafty. That's why they call it wisdom. They become professionals at tricking people into getting what they want. They don't mind befriending you, becoming your friend for a season, lying to you, and all that time they lying to you just to get what they want. They're willing to sacrifice that part of their life to trick you into giving them what they want. That's the craftiness of it. That's the wisdom of it. That's the craftiness of it. Okay? And trust me when I tell you, they're good at what they do. They'll make them believe us. They're good at what they do. It's people out there that it's people out there that they can put words together. They crafty with it. They can put words together, and if you don't watch it, they'll hide it in the truth. People know how to hide the truth. And you look at it and you say, it's almost true. But because they changed one or two words, you know, it was almost like it was almost the truth. They changed one or two words and it was almost the truth. It sounded so good when it came out, but it really was a lie. Okay? And those are the ones that we have to be very careful. Very careful with. Okay? And that's what was happening with James in the church. You know, you had Pharisees and Sadducees, they look holy. They look blessed. Okay? And they were tricking people. They was tricking people. Not to follow Christ. And people are like that. And later on in the gospel and in the word of God, that's when you start hearing things like the Antichrist spirit is already in the world. Because it's preaching against Christ already. He just went to the cross. He just went to the cross. They already preaching against him. So guess what they're doing now? They done got pretty good at it right here. They done got pretty good at masking what Christianity is supposed to look like. And we have to be careful with that. Masking what Christianity should look like. Or what other people think it ought to be like. And after a while, you keep messing around, and Christianity ain't going to be Christianity. When we keep saying yes to everything, Christianity ain't going to be Christianity. It's going to be something else. Yeah, so we have to be careful. Have to be careful. Verse 16. We're almost finished with this thing, y'all. Verse 16. He says, for where envying and strife is, there is confusion and evil work. So envying, designed to have what someone else has. Everybody know that, right? Self-ambition, working hard to obtain something and make it all about yourself. James said, well these two give birth to something else. They start out as envying and self-ambition, but they give birth. Bad seeds still grow. They grow into something. Disorder. James said disorder. The state of confusion. That's what disorder is. The state of confusion. You ever walked in a church and all of a sudden you understand why it's operating like it's operating? Because they're in a state of confusion. Everybody got an agenda going on. It's a church within the church. Leadership arguing with each other. Not only are leadership arguing with each other, but they argue in front of the congregation, so there's no clear-cut leader. It's chaos. It's chaos. Disorder. It's a state of confusion. And then you're trying to bring more people in up under that. After the preaching I preached, you said, come up and join the church. And they look like, no, y'all get that right first. Disorder. Wickedness, the state of being morally wrong. And nobody's saying anything. That's what we're going on. Wickedness. Disorder. The state of being morally wrong. And that word state, when we use it, that word state is a particular condition that someone or something is in a specific time. At that state, at that moment. That's how it works. That's how it works. And everybody has a specific time that we were in something. You know, if you look back on enough, you say, man, I remember when I'm so glad God delivered me from, you could live back on your own, But this is what James was talking about. Golly, we got this going on. And that was the state of the church at that time. At that particular moment. At that particular moment. Okay? And James was saying, we got to put a lid on some of this. Everybody is speaking and saying things, and it's causing confusion, and James had to reel it in. You're going to reel this in. It's not Christ-like. We're going to have to reel it in and get back to what we need to get back to. The business of Christ. As far as salvation, love, peace, joy, all of the fruit of the Spirit that was acting as one. The 9 fruit of the Spirit that was acting as one. James said we got to get back to that. We're not off track. Okay? And every now and then, leadership has to reboot, what I call a reboot. And that's when you have to step back and take a look and ask yourself, are we still on track? Because I don't want movement and then we really moving in the wrong direction. Let's evaluate ourselves. Let's ask some questions and make sure that let's slow down for a second and make sure that we're going in the right direction. Because you could be doing 90 and going in the wrong direction. So everybody needs a moment that you just kind of take a deep breath and reevaluate the direction that you're going in. Everybody need a moment, because the Bible tells us that in our own eyes we think we're right. In our own eyes. So everybody, every now and then, you need a moment that you just kind of take a deep breath and step back and say, okay, let's evaluate this thing and make sure that we're still on the right track. Okay? Because contrary to what everybody believes, the devil gives blessings too.
Yes, sir.
If he feel like he can sidetrack you, yeah, he'll give you something. If he feel like he can pull you out of here, yeah, he'll give you something. He'll give you something. So we have to be careful. So verse 17, wisdom from above qualities. Verse 17, but the wisdom that is, y'all watch my glasses up, they're fogging up on me. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Okay? So pure, not mixed with hidden agendas. Okay? It's out front. It's out front. That's why you hear your pastor always talking about transparency. Let's not say one thing behind closed doors and then go do another thing. Let's not do that. Let's be transparent in our walk with Christ. To me, there's nothing worse than a double-minded man or double-minded woman. Say one thing and then do another thing. With that within itself causes confusion. You know what I mean? That causes confusion within itself. So let us not mix with hidden agendas like that. Peaceable, free from argument or conflict. Let's work it out. As Christians, you should be able to work it out. Even if you have to agree to disagree, you still should be able to work it out. There's nothing wrong with me saying, you know what, I don't see it that way, but let's see if it works. If it don't work, then we always change it back. But I don't have to go out stumping out of him. You know, like, it's the end of the world. And I'm never going to get along with this one because he disagreed with me. We don't have to do that. We can agree to disagree.
Amen.
I want this one, then you win that one. Or you want this one, maybe I'll win that one. But at least we went out singing Kumbaya or something. You know, we didn't just fall out. Because that ain't the Christian thing to do. Okay? Gentle, kind in character. Your character means so much to God. How we act means so much to God. It's all through the Bible, how he addressing character. And Peter, this is what Peter had the biggest problem with his character. Because you know, Peter was cussing one minute and cutting the ears off the next minute and saying I love you God the next minute. And he had all kinds of stuff going on with his character. But he finally got it right. Your character means so much. Willing to yield. Yield for the greater good. Well, that's a stumbling block for the church. Because a lot of people grew up saying, I got to have my way. And what you have in your way has to do with Christ having his way. That's a big stumbling block in the church. The only way you can have your way is Christ having his way in the church. Because this is not you, this is the church. So whether you have your way or not, Christ is still, if Christ needs you, he'll go through you. He's not a God that'll go around. He's not a God that's going to dip under. He's not a God that's going to jump over you. He will go through you. And let everybody know I went through you. So that's why we have to be careful when we got our hidden agenda and won't yield for the greater good. I know that's the right thing to do, but I want to do it. Who had that conversation with God? You telling God that you know that He knows what's best for us, but I want what's best for me. That's basically what we telling God. Woo. The Bible says it's a terrible thing to fall in the hands of the living God. And that's exactly what happens. Full of mercy, power with compassion. There's a lot of people that cannot handle power. Power with compassion. Power will change you. You will. And some people it make them arrogant. And some people it changes so that you can't function with them anymore. I've seen people get promotions on the job and you can't function with them no more. Because they don't have any compassion with their power. And I'm very leery with ministries that are set up in such a way where the pastor is the be-all. He's the last word. He's the first word and the last word in the church. I'm very leery of that. Because I believe in checks and balances. When you give all power to one, that was the fall of the church in the beginning. They gave all power to the Pope. And it caused a split. We got to be careful. It has to be checked. To me, in my opinion, it has to be checks and balances. Has to be. Somebody, because you write in your own mind. It's good to have someone else to say, what you think about that? It's good. Okay? Good fruits. That's that Christian character again. Good fruit. Without a trace of partiality, no favoritism. No favoritism. Love across the board. Love across the board. And this right here, love, no partiality, regardless of what's going on in somebody else's life, you have to be able to look past and love. Just because you're dealing with a situation don't mean that I take love from you. That was a big problem right there. No favoritism. Just because you can't afford to wear a suit to church don't mean that I take love from you. Or just because I ask you to do something in the ministry and you don't have a heart to do it, or you don't feel like there's something you can do, don't mean I take love from you. As a matter of fact, that means I draw you in closer and help build you to the place that you can help the ministry. And that's what we've fallen short a little bit, because I've seen some that ask somebody to do something in the ministry, and because they said no, they came back to that. Well, ask them to do it another time. You take your love from them. That's not looking across the board. That's judgmental. And it's shallow, really. It's shallow like that. So we have to be careful we don't get into that. Those are the things that we have to be careful we don't. James is saying, be careful you don't get into that. Hypocrisy. A hearer but not a follower. I'm teaching, but I ain't doing it. And I'm telling you, do what I say, but not what I do. Isn't that something? That's what the Pharisees were doing. Hypocrisy. Follow me, not Christ. Hypocrisy. We have to be careful. A hero, but not a follower. We teach love. Then you got to love. We teach no favoritism. Then you can't show it. Okay?
I was talking to last thing about that. We were talking about the pandemic. And he and I said, you know what? In all those characters we get up there, and I do believe in my own heart that the pandemic came for a reason. To us accept examine ourselves. But I think a lot of churches and people in churches were going in that direction. Reading the gym, arguing, all about money. And we were talking about, they said, just maybe, the pandemic maybe was going away and telling them, come and stop and look at what you're doing and where you're going.
Yeah.
And he and I had this long conversation, we were talking about the exact same thing. All the things you wrote up there, that you telling us, that a lot of churches that I saw were going in that direction. A lot of people in church.
Yeah.
Were making church that,
Right.
and not follow God's way, but my way. You know what? Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
We experienced a lot of this. If y'all remember before the pandemic. Y'all remember we were getting hit.
Yeah.
People, churches would call us and then we get over it and they beat up on us. Call us all the way across town to beat up on us. We could have stayed at home. And we start seeing these things. And then we were going to programs and coming home disappointed. Or we would go to another church and see somebody in the congregation get beat up. And we would come home disappointed. We start seeing this stuff. Preaching from the pulpit with no compassion. We start seeing these things. And this is nothing new. It's nothing new.
I think also for me, and I'm sure everybody here, that we keep saying it, that is in Christ. You have now been given the spirit of discernment. So now you can identify the love of Christ versus what somebody is saying. Anybody can get up there and preach a sermon and throw scripture, but if you do not feel, because you should feel the love of Christ, and you should feel the concern, and especially when you get into the fruits of the Spirit, the character of Christ. You know, we can all be in a church building, but if there's no love, there's no Christ. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that's so hard for us, that when you know the love that we share and we go somewhere else and you, like Pastor said, you invite us there or we go to these events, and what's most hurtful is these are our church brothers and sisters. But then you realize there's no love in that. And you know, you say, no Jesus in that at all. You know what I mean? But that's what you're expecting. And I think that's where the closer you get to Christ, the more intimate you get with Christ, the deeper your relationship, you start to discern who really does have a Christ-like spirit as opposed to it just being a program. Or as opposed to they just calling the church over or calling the members over to do something on the program, but ain't no Jesus in the program. That's when it hurts. Because who are we glorifying or who are we edifying? You, the program, or Jesus? And that's when it hurts, when you can see it for yourself that he's not in it. That's when it hurts.
And it has different effects on different members. With me, my pet peeve is when sheep beat up on sheep. That's a pet peeve of mine. To see another member beating up on another member when we all in this together.
Yes.
That's a pet peeve of mine. To see that. But for other members, it's different things. You know, you can go. We can be sitting in the same congregation and see two different things that aggravates us. That's not Christ-like. And we start seeing this, like James, we start seeing these things, you know, operate in the church. And it throws us for a minute. And now we got the other side where you separate yourself from it. Now we got people saying that the church won't come out. You know, now you got that side saying the church won't come out. No, we ain't coming out for foolishness.
Come on. Say that.
You're going to say it, man. We'll say it right. We ain't coming out for foolishness. Now we'll come out if you're trying to glorify God and help somebody. But if you got another agenda going, hidden agenda, and it's not pure, no, we ain't coming out. Nope. And that's what James was saying. You got to watch for these things. When you got this right here, you headed in the right direction. When you get these things right. That's what James was saying in verse 17. He said, but the wisdom that is from above, when you exercise these things, like they're supposed to be exercised, then you're in the right direction. You're headed in the right direction. Go ahead.
A lot of times we get that you know, I do it because I can do it.
Yep.
Or I do it because I want to do it. I don't care who it hurt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you see a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even in church,
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
people do it because they think they can do it and get away with it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care who you hurt or nothing.
Yeah. And then, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King had his saying was, basically what he was saying was, not only the ones that are going to be held accountable that do it, but the ones that let them do it.
That's right.
God going to hold us accountable for it. So at some point, we got to say, no, we're not going to do that.
Because it's a partaker. You're
That's
a
right.
partaker.
Yeah, you're allowing bad behavior. Knowingly allow that. It's one thing if I go and I'm caught off guard.
Yeah.
But this been going on and I just keep letting it go on. That's a whole different story, doesn't it? At some point you gotta say no. And then the last verse, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. So James concluded that when the tongue is operating from a place from above, it produces a harvest. And that harvest is peaceful for those who make peace. Okay? We reap what we sow. That's bottom line. We reap what we sow. You put it out there if you want to. You're coming back. But one thing I know about this world, it's round and it's spinning. It's coming back. It's coming back. Okay?
And a lot of times, I heard T.D. Jakes say this the other morning, which was amazing that you put this up here, where it says we reap what we sow. A lot of times we're expecting to reap from people kindness and love. But really, we're reaping love when we show love from God, from the Lord. So if you show love and you don't necessarily get love from the person, God will bless you for that. You know, but he will chastise you for the evil that you do or things that you do that are out of his will. So a lot of times we don't need to look to people for sowing what we've reaped. We really need to look for the reward from God, and he'll make everything else possible, which I never looked at it from that because I was thinking from people. If you show people love, they'll show you back love. And he said, that's not always so, you know. But if you do it in love and do it with the intent to please God, he will allow you to reap what you've sown to those people.
That's right.
And I was like, wow.
That's right. It's all about your relationship with God.
That was amazing.
And that's as a matter of fact, that's what impartiality comes in. When you do something and you do it to please God, regardless of who's standing in front of you, if you do it and you say, God will be pleased with what I'm doing,
Yes.
then it doesn't matter who's standing in front of you. And it goes back to, you know how the saying we had was that if I'm going to give you something, then I need to take my hand off of it.
Amen.
Because as long as I got my hand on it, I didn't give it to you. If I got to give it to you and then dictate what you do with it, I didn't give it to you.
Right.
That's not, I didn't give it to you. If I got to dictate what you do with it. That's the way your love need to be. You got to take your hand off of it. If I'm standing in front of you, but I'm trying to please God, then it doesn't matter who stands in front of me, because it's impartial in me. Because I'm ultimately trying to please God.
That's right.
So that way, if I'm trying to please God, then I'll treat, it doesn't matter who's standing in front of me. It becomes impartial. It becomes impartial.
Mm-hmm.
What stands in front of me don't dictate my love.
Yeah.
What's above me dictates my
Oh,
love.
my Lord.
then it becomes impartial. And that's the way we have to look at it. That's the way we have to look at it. Okay? Amen. Any more questions on verse 18? That's the last verse. I told y'all it was a short lesson. But power. But power. Amen. Amen. No more questions, then we'll close on out. Amen. Let us stand.